So who's heard of the DISC assessment? Raise your hand. I mean, I guess all of you have now because we've talked about it a couple of times. How many of you took the assessment before you came here? You raise your hand high. Raise your hand high. Okay. And if you hold your hand up, if you took the assessment and received your assessment, put your hand down. All right, we got 1 and 2 people. Okay, two. I sent yours, Jeff. You got it. I sent yours to you. But if you took the assessment and didn't get the assessment, find me. I'll make sure that we send it over to you. So I was turned on to the DISC assessment probably 8 years ago. I was working closely with a real estate company, Keller Williams, and they utilized this assessment in how they set their team up for success. And so, if you read a lot of real estate books, they are all geared towards real estate agents. But if you remove the word agent and put any other business role in that book, especially in a sales type role or growth role, they apply to everybody. And so I started looking at the DISC assessment and how that company was using it, and I realized that this applies to every single business. And I'm going to tell you a few reasons why, and I'm going to teach you how to use your assessment for not only the growth of your business, but what's most important is for your personal self-awareness, okay? So we talked about leadership. Dom talked about leadership. And all the breath work that he was teaching you to do, it's supposed to help you create the space in your brain in order to let the things that are going to help you grow and scale into your brain, right? If we move from meeting to meeting and don't take time to be self-aware, then we're not going to be able to grow. We're not going to give ourselves the space in order to figure out what we need to do to take it to the next level, okay? And so the first thing that we talk about, that Lauren, our COO, who's going to speak next, talks about often, is that how critical the DISC assessment is to your own personal self-awareness. How do I show up every single day? How do people perceive that I show up every single day? How do I think that I'm showing up every day so that, when I'm not getting the impact that I want from my clients or my people that I'm managing or leading, why is that? Well, a lot of that is because you haven't taken the time to look inside yourself and be aware of how you are being perceived by other people. And that's what's so important here. You can't control how other people think. You can't control what they're going to do. Only thing you control is yourself. And so the real baseline for this DISC assessment is so that you can learn how you show up at work or how you show up at home, because this applies at home too. Okay, so that's the first thing that I'm going to help you guys do. We're going to go through the DISC assessment, and we're going to talk about how you can interpret and read that assessment so that when you go home, you can look at it from an angle of self-awareness, and hopefully you can be a little bit more in your element and talk to people maybe more in theirs to have a bigger impact, okay? But once we get past the self-awareness part, I want to talk to you guys about how you can grow your business with the DISC assessment and how you can market using the DISC assessment, because this is a invaluable tool when you can wrap your brain around and start identifying how you can market your company and how you can manage your people with this tool. How's that sound? That sounds good? All right. So if you have the DISC assessment in front of you, as you pull it up on your phone, we're going to go through the 4 basic traits, right? The DISC is an acronym. I guess it's an acronym. The D, the I, the S, and the C, okay? And I don't like talking on PowerPoint presentations, so I have one slide you're going to look at the whole time, and I actually printed this out and put it on y'all's table. So this DISC wheel is on everybody's table in front of them, okay? So not that the D is the best characteristics or the one that everybody wants to aspire to, because some people who are business owners think that they have to have a D in order to grow a business. That's not true. It's the first one that we talk about because it is the first of the DISC acronym, the D. So somebody who is a high D, you can probably, if you're not a high D, you probably can think of somebody in your life who had these traits, whether it was maybe a parent or a boss or somebody else who's a business owner that you're friends with, you can kind of tell has these traits, right? A high D is going to be a very high-level thinker. They like bullet points. They like accomplishing goals. They think that they're a superhero sometimes. They can do everything better than everybody else. And so somebody who sets goals and a high-level thinker, that's somebody that may do well growing and scaling a business, right? But you can imagine that person, if they're very high level and they're always going, that they can burn some people out, whether that's their spouse or the employees that work with them, right? And so I personally, for better or for worse, am a very high D. And so my wife is on the other side of the circle there. She's an S. I don't know, she's probably hiding because she knows I'm speaking, but me and her can have a little tension at times, because when I get to tell you more about S's, you'll understand why. And my organization, the way that we operate, we have a lot of S's that support me as a high D and Lauren as a high D. And they can oftentimes feel like they're getting pushed, and they can oftentimes feel like they're being overstressed because the high Ds are always going. There is very little rest with a high D. A high I is going to be somebody who's very much of an influencer and promoter within your organization. They're the social butterflies. They're the ones that walk into a meeting, they got to make sure they tell everybody hello before they leave. Y'all know who those people are, right? Some of y'all might be those people. Always smiling, right? They're always excited about something. The way I always talk about a high D, and we'll talk more about in marketing, is that they're the people that will stand on the street corner and spin the pizza sign all day, thinking that they're making progress, right? Because they're just having a good time seeing everybody who walks by. Those people are always optimistic. They're fun to be around. If you interview a high I, you're going to be like, this is our person. This person's great, right? Because they come in the room and they like everybody. They're friends with everybody. But they can also be somewhat emotional at times, right? They want everybody to be happy. When things aren't going right, they can get a little bit stressed out about that. And so those I's are great on your sales team. They're great on your event planning team. They're great as the camaraderie within your organization, right? Sometimes a D can push them a lot. And sometimes those S's and C's can bring them down because they want to be a little bit more steady and they want to have a little more of a process. Anybody can think of a high I in their life that they're like, yeah, I know, or I'm a high I. Anybody a high I in the room? Okay, we got some high I's. Good. All right, the next is the S. The S are the reason why my world goes around in my life, both personally and professionally. So my first partner is John Stevens. So if y'all know John, is John in the room? No, he walked out? Okay. So when I was growing my business, I realized that the details, the paperwork, the day-to-day aspects, yeah, there he is. There's my guy. Yeah, those types of things are not my strong suit, right? And I'm a lawyer, right? How many people, there's not many good lawyers out there that aren't good at the details and aren't good at the compliance, that aren't good at those things. That was not my gift. And as I grew, I realized that I was missing a driver's license or missing a signature on things. And I had to find somebody who was more consistent in my business life so that I could continue to grow. And me and John have been friends for a long time. John is a high S, and he is the one that creates the process. He's the one that sees things through, right? He is very steady. He likes a process. He doesn't usually like change unless he trusts who is making the rules and changing. And so those types of people are critical within your organization and in your life, honestly. Those types of people like their friends and family. All right, I was actually having a conversation, maybe been an interview with somebody, and they were like, this assessment said that I'm not a people-oriented person. I don't like going out and meeting new people. But one part about this disc wheel that we'll talk about in a second is that the bottom half of this wheel are very outward, people-oriented people, right? The I and the S, if you look at the wheel. Well, I asked them a question. She said, I got in a car accident, and she said, I threw a crawfish bowl to thank the people who helped me while I was in my accident, had my accident. And I said, well, did you put on Facebook that you wanted everybody to come and celebrate those people? Or you just bring in those friends and family to have an intimate time with those people and share that experience to thank them? They said, well, I just invited the people I wanted to spend the time with. It's like, well, that is a trait of an S. They're people-oriented. They like their people. If they go to a networking event, they're going to go find the few people in the corner that they like spending time with. They have really deep relationships, and if they trust you as a leader and a business owner, they're going to ride or die with you, right? But as soon as you burn them or you stress them out, like a high D typically does, and they're ready to go, there's usually not anything bringing them back. They're moved on to the next thing because you've broken that trust. So those S's are super loyal people. They're very consistent. They like processes. They do not like change. And they need to be explained why things are changing if you're going to change them. So if you have S's in your life or you are an S, understand that about yourself or about those people so that you can make sure you manage them in the right way. And last is your C's. As a high D, C's get in my way a lot. My other partners, Lauren and Becky over here, their C is above the line. And so those types of people are very, very, very detail-oriented. They like to know things are right. And the way that we always describe it is a high C is somebody who doesn't like to be wrong. So they're going to make sure the details are very, very accurate. They're not going to go into a situation or they're not going to do anything. They'd rather be fired than do something wrong. So they're very, 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 very strict on the details. They're very strict on the process. They're going to double, triple, quadruple check to make sure things are right. Chad, are you a high C? Yeah. So CPAs a lot of times are high Cs because they like the numbers to be right. Engineers, some attorneys, they like the details, right? They love living in those types of things, so they're very, very compliant. Okay. If you have Cs in your life, you need to know. They want to know. They want to know all the details. They want to check it. They're not going to trust you. Your S is going to say, "Oh, I already trust you. You want to change this and now understand why? Go for it." Your C is going to say, "No. I love you, but I'm not doing this until I know this is right." You understand the difference? Okay. So the disc wheel that y'all can see on these TVs, I can't see it on the back. Keep turning around like it's on the back TV, but it's on this one. The disc wheel. Okay. I want y'all to understand how you can read these assessments. So my two favorite parts, because I'm a high D, I like the details. I don't like all the minutia and all the words. So on about page 26 and 29 of your assessment is going to be a bar graph on the 26, and on 29 there's going to be a circle graph. I love the circle graph because everybody is a combination of all four of those disc traits, right? The D, the I, the S, and the C. Some people are very, very low in certain areas. Some people are very, very high in certain areas. But whenever you plot that bar graph on a circle graph, like y'all can see up here, you can really see where people fit, okay? The farther from the center, the stronger they are with those traits. The closer to the center, the more that they kind of are pulled to the center from the traits on the other side of the circle. Does that make sense? Okay? And so, Chenzo, the clicker, do I have one more slide? That's it? Okay. I have a sheet where our organization is plotted on this assessment, on this wheel. When you can look at your organization and see that, that's where the magic happens. We'll talk about that in a minute. But in every one of the quadrants, there's actually there's keywords that tell you about that person, right? And on your results, your assessment results, there's actually a page that talks about the different characteristics that you have depending on what your DISC assessment results come back as. So I love looking at this. So you can kind of tell somebody's personality based on this assessment. But because there's so many combinations, and I think there's 360 combinations, 358 combinations. See, I'm a high D. 360 is great for me. She wants the exact number, 358. It applies to everything in your life. You'll start realizing, once you study this, it really does. But there's 358 combinations on here. So you might have somebody come in and they're a high D, but their C is high above the line. So they're going to move more over to on the D side, that D quarter of the circle, but they're going to be on the D side, but they're going to be pulled over towards a C. Similar with a DI. I'm a DI, so I sit in 12 quadrant, right? I like spending time with people, but I like solving problems with people. Somebody walks in my office and sits down and wants to shoot the breeze about what happened on Saturday night. I'm like, what are you doing in my office? Get out. But if Jonah wants to sit down and talk about how we're going to grow our business, I'll clear everything off my calendar because I love doing that with people, okay? So all that makes sense? No more clarity, all the different assessment personalities. Okay. All right, so that's the D, the I, the S, and the C. That's page 26 and 29. Those are really the highlights. Once you get comfortable with the DISC assessment, you know a lot about somebody by just flipping to those two pages. But from a self-awareness standpoint, I want to give y'all some exercises that you can do when you go home to help you better understand yourself. And sometimes we'll get people that'll take this assessment, and it's usually kind of a red flag. We're like, I don't agree with any of this stuff. This is all crazy. Or I don't agree with some of these things. That means that they probably lack some form of self-awareness. I would challenge you to read your general characteristics on page 6. When you get home, do that as homework. Highlight anything that you don't agree with, okay? Then I would print another one out. Give it to your mom. Give it to your spouse. Give it to your girlfriend. Give it to your boyfriend. Have them read it and have them tell you how they feel about the results. It's going to be really telling whenever they're like, man, this is 100% spot on. And you're like, no, all these things are wrong. They're like, that's what you think, right? And I challenge you also to fall in love with your personality assessment, right? You can't be good at everything. A lot of people talk about work on your weaknesses. I prefer to lean into what I'm good at and what I enjoy doing and put a whole bunch of really talented people around me that help me grow. Okay? And we'll talk about growth in just a second. But I challenge you, go home, read your assessment, and then give it to other people in your life that you care about that know you really well and have them tell you whether it's accurate or not. And you'll realize that there's a lot of that maybe somebody else's interpretation of you may be more accurate than your own interpretation of yourself. All right, on page 9, it talks about how you can communicate with somebody who has a certain characteristic, right? So if I read the assessment of somebody who's a high S, it tells you how they want to be communicated with. And I challenge you to think of it through the lens as a manager or a leader. How do I have a conversation with my employee in the way that they want to be talked to? And so that's what that section is. And then the next section on page 12 is how you are perceived, okay? When I walk into a room and I'm talking and there are a bunch of S's, how are they going to see me show up, right? Because as a high D, the emotion that I lead with is anger, generally speaking. And I will realize when I walk into a situation where the house is burning down or I want to solve a problem, I come across as I'm bossing people around and telling them what to do. It's not because I'm mad at anybody. I just want shit to get done. Pardon my French. But I want it to get done. And so I will start pointing and telling people what to do, and I will get frustrated. And when somebody asks me a question about what I'm doing in my role, whether I'm doing a good job, I will get frustrated with them because I'm doing my job. You know what I'm saying? And so as a high D, you got to check that. You got to make sure that you're not coming across as anger whenever you are being perceived. Same with a high I, right? They come across as emotional, frustrated if things aren't going the way they want to, or they're not getting to spend the way that they want to spend it, or they're not going to take time, or that you're telling them what to do, right? Or you don't give them the space to get out the chatty conversations they want to have before you start a meeting or something. Those high I's want that space. And so you got to make sure that you're giving them what they need in order for them to be able to feel like they're part of the team. Your S's, they want consistency. If you come up changing things every day, every week, they're going to get frustrated. You got to make sure you're aware of that if you come across as changing things without getting their opinion or getting their buy-in, they can get frustrated, right? And then your C's, they want the details. If you're pushing them to make a decision, a C is going to freeze up. They're going to sit on their hands and say, I would rather you fire me than make this decision. I've actually had that experience where people were like hiding things from us because they were like, I didn't get a chance to review that before I'm sending in my consult notes. I'd rather you fire me than not be able to look at that and make sure that I was right. Cool? All right, so let's talk about growth a little bit. All right, so the way that we use at Arena Collective and the way that we teach our clients to use this assessment whenever they're hiring is the first thing, and I'm kind of teeing up Lauren for her presentation on operating systems. In order for you to be able to start hiring the right people, you have to be fully aware of the way your organization should be structured, okay? We call that an accountability chart. It could be an organizational chart. Whatever is necessary within your organization to go where it needs to go, you have to have clarity around that. So you have a box at the top, you got another box, you got a bunch of lines that show a bunch of boxes, right? An organizational chart, everybody knows what that is. If you haven't taken the time to build one out, you absolutely have to. And you should think about what does my business need to look like when I'm getting where I want to go, right? And once you're able to build that, and Lauren's going to talk more about that, you really have to get intimate with each box on your chart. And what I mean by that is you need to be able to write the perfect DISC assessment for each one of those roles, okay? Again, I want you to walk away with actionable items, right? So I talked to you all about making sure your general assessment is right, validating that with your family and friends. Second thing I want you to understand is when Lauren gets done talking, you need to know what an accountability chart is, and you have to be able to define each role from a DISC assessment standpoint. And I talk about the DISC a lot. If you have another personality assessment that works, great. But you need to be able to build a profile for that ideal employee within your organization before you can start hiring. Because if you don't, you're going to start plugging people in, they're not going to work. Plugging somebody in, they're not going to work. And you're going to realize I'm putting the wrong people, the right behavioral styles into each role. Okay? So the first thing you have to do is be very intimate with each role within your organization. The second thing you have to do, make sure I'm on the second thing. The second thing you have to do is you've got to be disciplined and diligent about making sure that your interviewees match the right personality profile. At Arena Collective, when we have a job posting out there, we know what profile we want for that role. Before we even meet with somebody, we make them take an assessment. If you don't fit the personality profile, the person that we're looking for, unless you have some other glowing characteristics, we're probably going to tell you that you're not going to like the role that you're in. It's not going to naturally fit who you are. And we don't want to put you in a place that you're not going to be happy, that you're going to be frustrated with over time. So we want to make sure that you match that profile, okay? Now, if somebody is self-aware enough to know, okay, I get the role and really the traits and the things that I have to do every day, but I want to try, we're going to let them know, like, this is what it's going to look like. These are the things you're going to be asked to do, and we're going to hold you accountable to this stuff. So you need to understand what that is. Does that make sense? Build your accountability chart and make sure that everybody who you hire, you get a profile for them so you know whether they're going to be a strong fit for that role. And if you like somebody enough to give them a shot, like them enough to have an honest conversation and tell them these are the difficult things you're going to have to go up against because of the way that you are naturally built, okay? So that's how we use it to grow, and I challenge you, you will have a much easier time scaling your organization whenever you are intimate with each role in your organization and know exactly what profile would fit there. All right, the second thing, for managing people. This is not my greatest gift. I like to just go 100 miles an hour, and I like to trust everybody doing the right thing. I told you what to do. Get it done that way, right? That's my high D personality. Thank God for John, Lauren, and Becky. They are very good about holding people accountable to staying in touch with who they are, right? If somebody's having a hard time with their organization, we ask them to read their assessment again. Go read it every single week so that you're aware of why you're struggling in certain areas, your strengths and weaknesses as a person based on your DISC assessment. And I'm sure people get frustrated with this, but it is the best way to manage somebody in conflict with another person with your organization. Tell them to read the other person's DISC profile and then come back to us and say, can you tell based on the conflict you're having why y'all are having this problem? Because they speak and communicate differently than you, or they see you and perceive you differently than you actually are coming. You have to be aware, and you got to teach your employees to be aware so that they can start solving these problems themselves. So they're constantly coming to you with problems because of just conflict within their behavioral assessments. That's easy to fix. They need to be aware of this just as much as you are. We have a workshop. We did it last year with our entire company. And we had the DISC wheel pulled out with all the different assessments of our whole organization, and we talked to every single person. And if somebody goes into Lauren's office and says, so-and-so pissed me off, and they're doing this, she'll say, come back tomorrow after you've read their assessment and tell me if you have a solution to that problem. And if they still have a problem or they want us to be a part of the conversation, we will, but we help them solve their own problems with that, okay? So it's a great tool for you guys to manage people so that you can hold them accountable to speaking and living within their behavioral style, but also making sure that they're coming to work in a way that everybody can enjoy and that they're not just leading with their natural style and pushing everybody over like I do. All right, and then those are the two ways that we used it for growth, and I'm sure we used it a bunch of other ways, but I got 3 minutes left. This is my favorite part of work and the job. It's marketing, okay? I use a DISC assessment for marketing in several ways. Who's in a marketing role? Who's in a sales role? Who knows the difference between marketing and sales? Everybody, right? Yeah. So marketing is how your brand is put out into the world. That's my perception of marketing. How do we put our brand out there? How do we put our name in front of as many people or as many of our ideal clients as we can, okay? In order for you to really grow and scale your business, you have to have a very clear picture of who your ideal client is. Just like you have to have a very clear picture of the person in each role of your organization, right? If you have a very clear picture of who your ideal client is, then you can build a marketing plan tailored to that person, okay? If I'm marketing to CPAs and I start throwing a bunch of parties, you're probably going to scare off most of the CPAs that you're working with, right? If you're working with a bunch of event planners and you're a bookkeeper and you're trying to help them grow their business and you want to sit down with them and want to talk about the numbers all day, they're probably going to be like, I'm not dealing with this guy. He just wants to talk about numbers. I just want to talk about throwing a party, right? So whenever you are clear on your marketing, who your ideal client is, you can really build a marketing plan tailored to them. But on the flip side of that, if you're not a marketer and you don't enjoy that part of the business, you can build a marketing plan that is built towards your personality profile, okay? And I wrote down some ideas. For a high D who just likes to get to the point, use social media to create reels for yourself. Right, Shelby? Where's Shelby? She left. Okay. Create reels, short clips. Get to the point. Look to the camera. Tell the person what they need to hear. That's what a high D likes to do, right? Who's a high D in the room? All right, y'all like to tell people what to do, right? Y'all like to go straight to the point. Well, create a social media plan that does that, right? If you're a high S and you like people, right? Take your best clients and create a podcast and just have conversations with them about their business and create a bigger and deeper relationship with them. Do it on camera and share that kind of stuff on social media, right? That's marketing in the way that you enjoy to market. If you're a high C and you like the details, create an educational piece on all the ins and outs of insurance, right? And then teach people what insurance is about to make sure that they get it right. A high C loves to teach people, make sure things are accurate. And if you're a high I, create a podcast with just enjoying and hanging out with a bunch of people. Right? Meet new people through your podcast. Or meet new people and bring them on camera. Throw an event. Hang out with your people. But use your own natural behavioral style in order to help you market in a way that you enjoy. Because marketing can be tough. It's a lot of giving and giving and giving. And you got to make sure that it's actually giving you something back. And in order to do that, you have to be able to do it in a way that you enjoy. Was that helpful? Was that some ideas for you guys? Same thing from a sales standpoint. And this is what I'll wrap up with. So I got 42 seconds. From a sales standpoint, if you know who you're going in the room with, you have to tailor the way that you're presenting yourself to that person, right? So like I always talk about like a mortgage lender. I deal a lot with the real estate profession. If you're a mortgage lender and you get a loan application, it's right on the sheet usually. They're going to tell you what their job is and what they do. You can probably have a good guess of what their behavioral style is going to be based on what their job is that they do every day. If I have a CPA that's coming to me and they're very compliant, a very high C, and I'm trying to tell them what they need to know about their mortgage loan, I'm not going to go talk to them about the paint color at the house and what type of grass they need to have and what the home warming party they're going to have. They want to know, what's my rate? Where's the amortization schedule? I want to review it. I want to know the details and the numbers. So make sure you present the information to them that way. But if you got the sales rep that sells liquor on the weekend or during the week, that's very high I, don't dump a whole bunch of long emails on them. They're not going to read it, and you're going to get frustrated with them. So figure out how to identify who you're marketing to. Again, the ideal client profile. But from a sales standpoint, well, the way that you present the information and the way you interact with somebody, make sure you know what their profile is, or at least have a good guess. Start identifying these things so that you can present the information to them in a way that they want to receive it. If you email me, don't send me a whole bunch of long paragraphs. I'm not reading it. I want the bullet point. I'm going to put it in ChatGPT. It's going to tell me the summarized version of what you just said. Right, Lauren? Yeah, she put her head down. Anyway, was that helpful? Is that helpful? Does anybody have any questions before I hop off? I have one question in the back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which side are you on? So you a CD? A CI? A DI. Okay. That's interesting. I would imagine that you were probably thinking about it in both a work and home situation maybe, and not really identifying which one that you were supposed to take the assessment through. But, a lot of people who are very compliant that overanalyze it feel like that's the same thing. It's like hard for me to make a decision over the results of or what answer I should give. Let's talk about that more. I'd love to look at your assessment and maybe we can talk about it, because you were probably somewhere towards the middle of the wheel. No, you're on the outside? Okay, so you and me are about the same. I'd love to look at it with you and review it with you. So, okay, cool. Anybody? And so we also, before Jason asked this question, we have, everybody got to take an assessment. We offer assessments for people, and we will actually come into an organization and show you what your organizational chart looks like with everybody on the same wheel and how they can relate. So if y'all want to talk about that in more detail, please let me know. I haven't ever done this when people ask me questions, so you can put me on the spot, Jay. Go ahead. You take Lawrence after work today, and let's see how that result comes back. I would say that, again, like Don was saying, in order to get into the weeds of your heart and the things and who you are, you have to take it for yourself. But I do think that there's a place for somebody to validate the decision, the results. I mean, you're going, again, unless you do these types of things, you take the time to think and take the introspective look on yourself. If you don't do that often enough, you're probably going to have some blind spots. And so I would say, definitely take the assessment. Definitely give it to people that you love and that you care about that they can give you a perspective that you may not have. I got one more. Who wants? Me and Steve spend a lot of time together. Well, I'll answer your question. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead. Okay.
I was just going to ask, does it ever change as you mature and understand?
I'm glad you asked that question. Things in your life can affect how you show up in your assessment and your behavioral style. So they always recommend every 2 years you retake the assessment to see where you're at. Whenever I first started in business, I was a 10. I moved over to 11 and 12. That's because I had to spend a lot more time managing people, and I had to let some of that edge off. When I was by myself at first, I was 100 miles an hour, so I could lean into that a little bit more. So that's a good question. But yes, every 2 years or so, you retake the assessment to see if it's changed at all. Thanks, guys.